Morning, Gail.
Good morning, Phoebes. How are you?
Okay, it's so good to see you.
Can you hear
You
me
know,
good?
as good as this is. I do hear you well.
Okay.
Yeah. How about how about me? My internet's not great either.
Yeah, you have a little bit of a delay and you're very, very fixated, but
Okay.
I can hear you. That's the most
Okay.
important. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Your internet, your
Sometime,
Wi-Fi is not good.
yeah, we're only on satellite internet where I am, so it's always a little questionable. The delay tends to be my biggest issue. I just turned my video off because sometimes I find that
It is
the
better.
audio gets better.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
got better.
So I might have to sacrifice that, but that's fine. Y'all didn't come here to look at my face. So
Well, it's the same thing with me when I'm in these meetings. I sometimes have to shut mine off too.
yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
So we're gonna try to just go slow today. Use circle process just to make sure we're checking in with everybody on every question we ask. Even if you want to pass, that's fine. But like I think it can be easy to not even realize we've lost people in virtual world. So trying to
okay.
be thoughtful about that today. And yeah, we'll have a chance to. I'm still looking forward to us getting far enough ahead in our conversations with each other that we can get a sense of like, all right, we want to meet in person every other month next year, or whatever it's going to be, just get a little bit more settled into something that really works for folks. It's
Okay.
a lot of experimenting right now, I feel, quite frankly.
Well, it's all new. It's okay.
Hmm.
We'll get there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had sent an email to Alex and she oh there she is. Um I was feeling a little discouraged in the last week because it really is so hard to connect with people. Um I've had this I've been on this board for 4 years and 11 months. And that has been the biggest struggle is getting people engaged. And this is not a
Yeah.
broad subject. This is where they live, getting them to come to meetings, even um, just getting them to have a conversation. It's really difficult. It's a big challenge. So anything that we can come up with that helps to engage people into not only the process, but just the conversation.
Hang on enough. Sorry, my dog. I'm gonna have to deal with this too. Such a human experience being virtual. Yeah, Gail, I hear you. I really feel like it's on us as a collective. Just think about you're not the only one I think who's going to run into this challenge that the people we most need to speak to and reach are really busy with the struggle of dealing with environmental injustice. It's like a constant struggle in this work is like there is a degree of privilege that allows one to even have the time space capacity to be in these meeting rooms, which is why you all have stepped forward to do that. But I think we need to give you resources and tools, activate resources and tools that you all can tap into to make it to similarly sort of pass that privilege along, right? Like to make it a little bit more easy for folks to engage with us, whether that is, things we've brainstormed around, even just a raffle for doing a survey
Right.
possibility or compensating folks, coming to them, all these things. So I think today's conversation is going to, I hope, speak directly to the struggle you're running into. And I hope it's not a reflection on you. I feel like this is like a universal struggle for folks who are trying to speak to folks on the front lines. Being the definition of being a frontline community is you are struggling with environmental injustices that take up a lot of time, energy, space, and bandwidth. So
Mhm.
engagement's not a small ask. Yeah. But I really appreciate your efforts and that you're just kind of jumping into it. So it'll be nice for you to share that with the full group today. We'll do that.
Thanks. I have one
Uh,
question before you're
yeah.
going to start the meeting. What does dismantle white comfort mean?
That's a great question, Gail. I'm not gonna sit here and answer that fully right now, because
I'll ask
it's
when
got
the
a
time
there's a
comes
lot
then.
in it. I think it'd be a great thing for us to visit in the group conversation today. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
We'll think about how comfort connects to our sense of what we perceive as normal or what we perceive as sort of expected, and how when we try to shift those dynamics and that puts pressure on people to change their patterns, that can be uncomfortable and that can stand in the way a lot of times of change. So that's one piece to it. But it's 9:01. We have a lot of folks joining us, which is super wonderful. So I think it'd be great to jump into introductions and settling in with each other. Good morning, everybody. Um, and yeah, hi. Hi, we're gonna go around together and I'll have a chance to say hi to each other. Welcome to use the chat if anybody wants to just pop a hello, good morning, or you're welcome to use the chat for that end. Um, yeah, I'm gonna just start to talk through some of the housekeeping bits while we all get settled in. It's 9 a.m. on a Monday, so I'm just gonna like straight up start with that, hold that, honor that for all of us. Um, We are virtual only today, so we all do collectively contend with the challenges and limitations of that. I'm already off video because I know my audio tends to be stronger when I'm off video. I only have satellite internet where I live. So I would just really strongly encourage us to use the chat today, and or whatever, to just pause each other if we don't hear each other, not be afraid to interrupt to make if it's not clear, it's cutting out. Um, yeah, it's more important that we take the time it takes to hear each other, than to get through our full agenda. So that's just one little piece of housekeeping to start. Um, this is a public meeting, so we will have folks from the public here along with our advisory council members. This meeting will be recorded. We will post this meeting online, so just know that, yep, this is being recorded. We're also taking a transcription. Um, with all of our meetings, we trust that you will take care of your needs as we go. If you need to take a break, that's all fine. We will have two 15-minute breaks built into the agenda, so that will happen too. For folks who Teams is a little less familiar, at the top of the sort of like bar at the top of your screen, you should see some icons. One is a little hand with a raise sign. That's a really useful way in a large group to kind of indicate that you'd like.
Phoebes, your audio cut out.
All
You
right.
cut out, Phoebe.
Okay, this happens from time to time with Phoebes. As he mentioned at the beginning, he is in a very rural area at home, and so Wi-Fi can be less reliable. But I'll pick it up from here because I keep the housekeeping going. Phoebes was just explaining that you can raise your hand using the raise hand button at the top on the bar. Please let us know if you need support finding that function. Also want to note that you can turn on live captions for yourself if you go to the top bar and then there's those three little dots, and it says more underneath. You can click that and go down to the.
It's a dry morning.
It's
For
a
the first time in several days here.
Yep, that's good.
So
So you can.
welcome dry morning.
That is a good change. You can go to, so as I was saying, the language and speech, you can turn on the live captions under the more section, and please drop into the chat if you need support with that. And Phoebes, Carla, and I will be monitoring the chat as the meeting goes. And we'll be dropping facilitation resources in the chat as it goes as well. I already dropped the meeting folder in the chat where all the relevant resources are for this meeting. Any questions around those kind of logistical, technical housekeeping items? That all sounds good. Okay, the next item is just to review all together the community agreements that we spoke about the first meeting and the second meeting, and now we're circling back to them here. I just dropped those in the chat. If you want to take a look at them, see how we feel about them, it might be nice if we could go around in a circle and read them together and make sure we're all still consenting to these community agreements and feel on the same page about that. So if you have the document open, could you just raise your hand and then we'll pass it off to each other? Okay, Mariana, you want to start with reading the first one?
Yes, I'm trying to find the microphone. Good morning, everybody. First one says, be present with yourself and one another. Be present with your body and feelings. If you need to take a break to take care of yourself, please do. Be present for one another by listening deeply.
Thank you. And Gail, do you want to read the second one?
Sure. Calling in and calling out. Assume best intent, but attend to impact. We can stop things that are being said that are hurtful and be curious and create a space for learning. Tools include using oops, ouch to indicate a pause is needed.
Great. Thank you for that. Trey, do you want to read the third one?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Number 3, expect and accept non-closure. We are unlikely to leave here feeling 100% ready to go or to have everything on our agenda wrapped up, especially if we are committed to moving at the speed of trust.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you want to go with number 4?
Sure. Center respect. Be respectful, intentional, and work to build trust and create a safe and inviting space.
And the 5th one, Susanna, would you feel comfortable reading that one?
Share verbal and other space mindfully. Consider the balance of taking and making space, like moving up and moving back. Tools to do this include the acronym WAIT, why am I talking? And vocalizing support for another person's comment without repeating the same points that have already been made.
Great. Thank you all for doing that with me. How do we feel about those community agreements? Do we still feel in agreement about them? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. Excellent. And feel free during the meeting to call us back into alignment with these agreements if you feel that you need to. Okay. The next item is the agenda. Let me just pull that up and pop it into the chat. All right, that's in the chat now. That's our agenda for today. So we're in the welcome and introduction section. Then at 9:15, we're going to start an hour-long consultation process on the core principles of community engagement, which is draft 2 coming out of the interagency committee meeting last week. So that's draft 2. At 10:15, we'll have a public comment that we'll hold ourselves accountable to. I noticed there's a lot of folks from the public here, so thank you so much for showing up. The first public comment is at 10:15. And then we'll have a 15-minute break and then come back together at 10:45 to pick up the conversation from July 18th, which we had in the breakout room, which will be how we work together and speak a little bit more about community engagement approaches for the advisory council and also some concrete possible next steps. And then at the end, we'll close with another 15-minute public comment period. So how does everyone feel? That's the agenda review. Any questions that need to be answered before we all approve the agenda, or are we thumbs up with the agenda? I see some thumbs up. Okay, great.
Alex, I'm not able to use that function of the thumbs up.
Great. Well, you can just do it actually in person or, just unmute yourself, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. So I think now let's move on to just brief introductions. If we can go around first with the advisory council members, just share your name, your pronouns, your affiliation. That would be great. And then we'll also pass it on to the members of the public who are here quickly. I'll start off. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Lintner, and I use she, her pronouns. And along with Phoebes Potter, I'm one of the environmental justice coordinators. And I'll pass it off to Mariana.
Hello, everybody. This is Mariana Lamaison Sears. I am a member of the Advisory Council. I am here to represent folks within the spectrum of food and security, and I work for Hunger Free Vermont. My pronouns are she and her, and I guess that's about all the things that we need to say for now. Thank you. Oh, should I pass it? All right, Gail, it's all yours.
Good morning, everybody. Trey Martin. I use he, him pronouns, and I work at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board as Director of Conservation. And I will pass it to Carla.
You're muted, Carla. Carla, I think you're still muted. We can't hear you. Maybe we'll pass it off to someone else and circle back to you. Jennifer, do you feel ready to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Jennifer Byrne. I'm the manager of the White River Natural Resource Conservation District. I'm here on the Advisory Council representing the NRCC, the Natural Resource Conservation Council, which is the Conservation District's overarching council. Thank you.
Maybe pass it off to Susanna. I think Gail might be frozen and Carla seems to be having challenges with the microphone.
Great. Hi, good morning, everybody. Susanna Davis, Racial Equity Director for the state. I use she series pronouns. I actually don't know by name the other working group members, so I wouldn't know who to pass it off to either.
Okay. Gail, are you with us? Just checking in. I'm actually curious because looking at participants, we only have 5 advisory council members here: Jennifer, Mariana, Trey, Susanna, and now Gail just dropped off, it seems. So we don't have a quorum of members.
I'm also here.
Oh, hi,
I'm
Kaya.
Brittany
So
Watson.
sorry. So sorry.
I'm here
Okay.
as well. Zaraya's here.
Yep.
Okay, so Kaya, Zaraya, and Brittany, you're all here as well?
Yes.
Okay, maybe pass it off to you all to say hi and introduce yourself to the group.
Great, I can start. Hi, this is Zaraya Hightower. I use she, her series pronouns, and I'm a city councilor in Burlington and representing municipal folks, and I will be on camera soon.
Great.
I can go. This is Kaya Morris. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an equity consultant in Chittenden County. I'll pass it to Brittany.
I'm Brittany Watson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the social justice rep for this council, and I am the digital equity officer for the Vermont Community Broadband Board. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Gail, I'm noticing, are you able to speak now that your video is off to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gail Pezzo. I'm on the Advisory Council. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a representative of mobile home communities, and I am the president of Westbury Homeowners Association. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I think, oh, Carla, are you good now? Let's say hi to Carla.
Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I would like to excuse myself for the technical difficulties I've been having this morning. That comment that I made earlier about good morning is dry here, I was seeing everyone frozen on the screen. And so I thought there was absolute silence. I was not aware that folks were talking. So my apologies for that. Must have been kind of funny to say the least. My name is Carla Raimundi, she, her. I am very glad to be here this morning with you all, and I am the Director for Civil Rights and Environmental Justice for the Agency of Natural Resources, and my coworkers are Alex Lintner and Phoebes Butter. Thank you very much, and I'll be taking notes, so I would appreciate if before speaking you could say your name and speak slowly. That would really facilitate my responsibilities today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. I believe that's all the advisory council members. If there are any members of the public who want to say hi and introduce themselves to the advisory council members, I would just ask that you raise your hand because I don't want to assume you all want to say hi. So if any members of the public want to introduce themselves in a similar way, please raise your hand now. Okay, Emily.
Hello.
Hi,
Everybody. I'm Emily Rogers, she, her pronouns, and I'm an accessible assistance specialist with the Department of Environmental Conservation. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Melanie, do you want to go next? Melanie Sands.
Sorry, I have two monitors and one was not clicking off, of course, right whenever you called on me. Hi, I'm Melanie Sands. I'm with Eastern Research Group. I actually live in Middlebury, but I am working with ANR to develop the Municipal Vulnerability Index. And so we have some overlap with this group, and I know I've met a couple of people on some of our calls so far. So I'm just really interested in learning more about what everyone's doing and taking some of that information forward as we're developing the vulnerability tool and considering those populations.
Thanks, Melanie. Hannah?
Hey, everybody. Michael Fernandez and Hannah Giannotti from Bennington County Conservation District. Good to see everybody. Just popping in to stay in the loop.
Great to see you both. Any other members of the public want to say hi? Let's see, Rachel.
Just saying hi, this is Rachel Stevens at the Agency of Natural Resources. I provide legal support to the agency and to the council if needed. Just saying hello.
Thanks, Rachel. And Earl?
Hello, I'm Earl Hatley. I'm an enrolled member of the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi. I'm president of Otoquechee Water Protectors Association, and I serve on the boards of BAIL, Rural Vermont, and Vermont Healthy Soils Coalition. Walibani, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Earl. Anyone else from the public? It's great to see all these faces and learn more about your backgrounds. Thanks all so much for showing up this morning on a Monday morning, bright and early. I think that will do for intros. I think everyone's spoken. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the consultation process for the core principles of community engagement. Sorry, normally Phoebes would be here to help, so just bear with me a second as I drop some stuff.
I am back.
Oh, Phoebes.
Also, hi everyone.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Okay, do you want to take up facilitation again? Do you feel tech?
I mean, you're doing a wonderful job, but I'm happy to jump back in for this stage.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Apologies, everyone. If it drops again, I will take the 5 minutes it takes me to drive to the library, so it won't be an issue after that. But I'm fingers crossed I can stay home. No cable out here in Groton yet. Okay, so yeah, the deliverable that we're actively working on right now is the core principles of community engagement, right? And Alex will drop kind of our working draft into the chat for folks to access, and also share the screen so we can sort of track along to some of what we're going to talk about today. I want to start just real quick talking about sort of the process for developing the principles and just like where we're at in that process, and give space for any thoughts on that. And then we're going to go into kind of a circle process to to just digest these principles and talk about them as a group. We did this with the interagency committee, not last Friday, but the Friday before the 11th. And, you know, there was a totally mixed bag of just how familiar folks were with the draft, and it still worked really well. Folks sort of got in a rhythm and caught up and started to get some feedback. So it's, we found that it worked without a, you know, it's okay if this is kind of your first time really digging into it. Great, thanks, Alex. So just real quick process-wise, as I mentioned, so, you know, you can just jump to the timeline, Alex, that's fine. So as mentioned, you know, we started drafting these core engagement principles using the listening session feedback that we heard during our joint meeting on July 18th, plus referencing other feedback you all and other folks had sent in advance as we had been collecting. And so on August 11th, we had the interagency committee, who are the lead drafters in the law for this document, really spend some time giving us feedback and refining that draft. The draft also included submissions from each of the interagency committee members. So each person sent 3 principles, and that was sort of a lot of the main material that went into the draft that we're looking at, that we synthesized. So this is now the opportunity to get you all's feedback on sort of where you know, whether you feel like the interagency committee's draft is where it needs to be and ways to improve that, so that Alex and I can get that feedback incorporated. We do have another then joint meeting scheduled for next Monday, to be able to collectively then sort of talk back and forth through any areas where we feel like, you know, there's a little bit of hang up or we need to negotiate things between us. And the intention in that joint meeting is that we come to consensus on a working draft that we feel like is ready to start to go out to meaningfully collect public feedback and agency staff feedback. So originally we had been working towards a September 1st deadline to be sort of wrapped up. We're just already proactively saying, no, we're going to need more spaciousness than that. And so I just want to make that clear that, you know, what we're trying to do by September 1st is say, this is a draft we feel like we can really start to put out there, and that we feel like we've done our work to start to ask the public to weigh in and give some feedback. And then we, at the moment, have joint meetings scheduled out for September, October, and November. So at each of those touch points, it'll be another kind of consensus temperature checking moment to see if we're at the phase where we're ready to finalize the draft. And once it's finalized, the idea is that goes to all 10 covered state agencies, and they will be using the principles to write their community engagement plans. So just want to pause there in terms of process of where we're at, always subject to adaptation as we go. Any immediate just feedback or thoughts on the process side of things before we get into the content? Okay, cool. Great. We'll revisit meetings and process also later in this meeting. So it's always an open conversation. Great. So we're going to shift then to actually getting into the principles. And what I'm proposing we do is, as we'll have the short list of the principles up on the screen. So it's kind of easy to see all, I think now 19 principles at a glance. And the idea is as we go around the circle, and, you know, basically try to use that time and be thoughtful about just how much time and space we're taking up so everyone's voice can get heard. But to either use your chance to maybe add a principle to the list or clarify or modify a principle on the list. You could just thumbs up, reinforce, like this one's really important. Let's make sure that, you know, this gets reinforced. Or you could remove a principle from the list, right? So add a principle, remove a principle, modify a principle, or thumbs up a principle. Or number 5, of course, is always pass. And the beauty of the circle is if you're not ready to talk now, the circle will come back around to you and you will have a chance to speak when you feel ready. So please don't feel shy to use pass. It tends to be really helpful actually in circle process. But a circle process also gives us the opportunity to just check in that we're giving everyone the invitation to speak, and not not feeling like we have to, kind of squeeze ourselves into a busy conversation to do that. So we'll just keep the same rotation of folks throughout today's meeting, just to make it so we start to get in a rhythm. And the other thing I'll say is, like, the prompts are there to help keep us on track. If you use something else you want to say that doesn't fit cleanly in the prompts, that's totally okay. Just use the time for what feels like important to get off your chest about the core engagement principles. That's totally fine. So Alex, are we still sharing the principles, and could we have that sort of like summary page up? Thanks. Any questions about the circle process? Cool. Okay. Great. So so the current draft principles are organized loosely into two sort of groupings. And, the document, which is in the chat, hopefully folks are able to open and access that, or have had some time before the meeting with that. If you scroll down, this is just the at a glance visual, but there's a more detailed description for each of the principles. And yeah, because we're fairly tight on time, I'm not going to necessarily read them all through. I think we can go ahead and just jump into the conversation. Alex, do we have a set rotation that we want to drop in the chat at this point?
Yeah, let me stop screen sharing for 1 second to do that.
Well, I can also do it.
And I think everyone is here except Walter. So this is okay, there we go.
Okay, cool. Great. All right, luck of the draw. This was random, I'm pretty sure. So we have Zariah first on our list. So Zariah, I invite you to kick off our circle, and if you don't feel ready yet, pass is always available to you. We'll just keep making our way.
No, I feel ready. Was there a specific prompt, or?
There is. So the prompt is looking at this list of principles, sort of want your feedback either to clarify or modify a principle on the list, and or add a principle or remove a principle, essentially, or just general feedback if that feels important. But the idea is us just trying to wrap our minds around, do we feel like this big picture like really encapsulates the set of principles that we would want to have in this guide?
Great. I feel good about the principles. I don't have any additions or subtractions. More a high level concern that I have is because often it's not one person who's in charge of implementing this, it's an organization, and what that looks like on an organizational level and who's accountable to implementing them. But the principles themselves, I feel fine with, and I feel like there was thought put into them, and I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of this good. If this is what happens, we will have done well. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Zariah. Brittany?
Yeah, I feel the same. I don't have any additions or subtractions. I'm going to keep looking through the list, though. And if I do, I'll just raise my hand if that changes. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Brittany. Gail?
No additions or subtractions.
Right. And also clarifications, modifications, thumbs up, this is important and I want us to say this about it. Those are also welcome in these comments. It's not to be so just thumbs up, thumbs down. We can have nuance in our comments. Just want to invite that. But Gail, if you feel complete, then we'll go to Mariana.
Yes.
Okay, I am next. First, thank you very much who put this together. I feel very comfortable, and I felt that the principles are very complete. I couldn't find anything that was missing. I would like to reinforce the one on accessibility and inclusive outreach, and make sure that our language is always down to the level of everybody's understanding. And I would like to see that starting like as soon as the next meeting outreach flyer is out there. And some suggestions could include, and we can talk more about it, but suggestions to change language could be starting from the word public input and change it to, we would like to hear about you. So from that level on, we should start implementing these principles ourselves. And I would love to see a simplification of language all through the process. So that's what I would like to reinforce. And then I thought that this is not necessary, but it could be that we could combine 2 principles in each of the sections to make it a little shorter, which in turn will make it a little bit more accessible. I thought that in the section Lying the Ground, the first section, we could potentially combine the principles of prioritizing most impacted people voices with addressing the systemic barriers. I thought there could be some combination there in the language and in the meaning of those 2. We could go into more details later if needed or wanted. And then the second section, I thought we could try to create only 1 principle out of transparency and accountability. Those also seem related, and I don't know, I think combining and making less language and less principle will mean that it'll make easier the reading, more digestible. But again, these are just suggestions, nothing that I feel strongly about that this is the way it has to be. Not at all. I really, really felt this was very well documented. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Mariana. I really appreciate all that feedback. Miriam, you're next on our circle order.
Oh, so sorry, Phoebes. Miriam let me know like just right before the meeting she can't make it. So
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Mhm.
Okay. Not great. But thank you for letting me know. Kaya, you're next on the list.
Yes. Thanks, folks. Good morning, Kaya Morris, she, her again. So I thought the list was pretty good. I appreciate the comment around like that. It's great guidance. They will need their hands held. Like they're gonna need like direct examples. That would be the only thing that doesn't have to hold up this process, but clear examples and saying that it's not an exhaustive list of any sort. I appreciated the nods to the previous work that was done. That was a little bit of my like reticence during our joint meeting, was just like, we already did this and you got to pay folks for this info. So I appreciate collating that and trying to pull that in here. I think those are kind of my only comments, but otherwise I think it's a great guiding document, and I also appreciated the citations back to the law. So those are my only thoughts on it.
Thank you, Kaya. Rich.
Oh, Rich, I think you're muted.
I thought I touched it and I didn't. Thank you, Wuliwuni, Kwai, everyone. Saw many of your faces this past weekend, and that was nice. I am pretty good with the principles as they are drafted. These 18 items, I fall back to recognizing that when something is stated, a lot of that depends on what you have in mind when you're talking about it and what your definitions are. And so some of these principles point directly back to the glossary where the definitions are. And I note that quite a number of these refer to the definition of the environmental focused populations, environmental justice populations. And I think we need to keep that definition wide open still, because it's extremely limited in terms of focusing only on humans. And there is no environment in the environmental justice. itself. We're looking at an anthropocentric view, and that's part of the issue from the get-go. So that's my primary comment. We got to open this up a little bit. It ends up being more of an economic focus than an environmental focus when we look at it through this definition. So that's where I'm at, and some of you have already heard that from me and from others. So thank you. Wuli Wuni.
Thank you, Rich. Trey.
I think that like Kaya, I really appreciate the backwards look to incorporate the guiding principles for just transition and the excellent resource library. And just wanted to ask how we can take more time to expound those and make those accessible to the communities we're working with. There's a great deal of really impressive work that's happened to date, but mindful of the idea that a lot of this has to be made presentable and made accessible. How do we do that when there's such a rich library of materials? How do we, incorporate without glossing over or assume that people are going to have gone to those libraries and access those things? I'll also just, instead of repeating it, just say I really appreciate what you just put out there, Rich. Thank you. We do need to change our perspective from which we view these problems.
Thank you, Trey. All right. Jennifer, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks so much for all the work that went into putting this together. First of all, I'm trying to kind of figure how to make this comment. It seems, and some of us have talked about this before, but there's sort of two things that we could be advising on with this document. And so I think that maybe could be more clear. So in the law, it's telling us to develop a core set of principles to guide and coordinate the development of the state community engagement plans. These principles are, of course, important in the development of those plans, but I'm wondering if we could maybe emphasize sections that are talking about how the agencies can work together to actually draft these plans. That's one thing that stands out to me. Something like some of the guidance that is actually already exists in developing plans. That's sort of what I feel like is missing from this document. EPA has guidance for Title VI compliance that spells out, what should be in a plan, and that's in that Connecting People to Power report. But like, for example, having for every event or issue, developing a public, engagement plan, it is a process that needs to be built into how the agency works. So yeah, I think kind of some of those things that are another in Principle 3, in the second paragraph of Principle 3, it mentions like agencies should map community partnerships within the agency with lead relationship holders for each community partnership. Maybe the wording's a little bit stranger, but I think it's important what that's getting at. And I think maybe it needs to be teased out a little bit more, made it more of a key point of like, what does that mean? And I've been thinking a lot about how this guidance isn't just for agencies, but also for, any recipients of federal funds in the state or pass-through funds from agencies, recipients of block grants, contractors, especially municipalities. What I've been seeing lately, some like smaller entities putting out community engagement contracts that are just like woefully underfunded, like huge amounts of work for like $5,000, that, you know, could be over 200 hours of work if you really thought about it or spelled it out. So I feel like there could be some guidance there. Maybe that's what we'll develop over time. But yeah, it's good in principle. Like I agree with all the principles, and I think it could maybe be taken to another level in terms of guiding agency actions. That's all I'll say for now.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, Susanna.
Thank you. I want to show gratitude and acknowledge that the suggestion I made last time on principle number 6 was included, and I think that was well done. And that comment was about not using historical character of a community as a way to pattern match or continue or perpetuate existing exclusion. So I appreciate the addition of that. I also just want to recognize principle number 8, which references principle number 14, when it quotes principle 14 in saying only make promises you can keep. And then 14 goes on to say, don't collect input if you can't meaningfully integrate it into the final product. And I don't remember if this was already part of the discussion, but in the event that it was not, I just want to add that that can often be used as the sort of weaponized incompetence to say, well, we don't think we can meaningfully include it, so let's just not do it at all. And I recognize the importance of not committing to something if you can't follow through, because you don't want to leave people hanging. But I also want to make sure that we're not unintentionally giving disinterested or sabotaging entities a seemingly noble loophole through which they can avoid engagement altogether. So again, I don't remember if that was part of the discussion, but if it wasn't, I just wanted to make sure it got said. Otherwise, I'm feeling okay with this.
Great. Thank you, Susanna. I believe that's our full circle to start and to make sure that's true. Okay, great. So beautiful. So I'm gonna have us go around again, but I'm gonna throw one more sort of additional refinement of one of the existing prompts, which I just dropped in the chat, which is, and this kind of speaks to some of the comments that I heard, you know, from Jennifer, from Zariah, from Kaya, from other folks throughout this, of like, the content's great, but how should state agencies, how do we want to guide state agencies and how they would approach planning around these principles? And so that could be reflected in the introduction to this document. It could be reflected in, you know, when we send these principles to the agencies, we'll also send some sort of guide that says, here's how you should start writing your plans that are due in July 2025. It could show up as an actual set of principles. There could be a third section that, you know, here's how you would, here's principles for approaching planning. So I just want to put that out there as a kind of additional prompts that might be helpful for us to chew on, but all the other prompts still exist. So I'm gonna, have us go around again, let y'all think about that, or if there's just other things that have popped up in your minds, that's also super welcome. Thank you so much for all the feedback. Super glad to hear that folks feel like it reflects the input you've already given. So Zariah, we're back to you at the top of the circle.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm feeling wary of adding another list of principles. I guess what I'd more like to see is and I'm trying to be slow so that the notes can, I'd like to more see just an acknowledgement of these principles in a plan that is made. So as folks are making their own plans, like being clear about what the goals are of each kind of component of their timeline and how that's going to fulfill these principles, which I realize is like an extra step, but I think that's how they'll actually have the, not just accountability, but also opportunity to meet these principles. So that's that would be my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany.
I think I'll pass for right now.
Thanks, Brittany. Gail, you're next.
I'd like to pass for right now.
Okay, Mariana.
Just reinforcing Rich's question of how and when can the definitions be expanded and revised, because we are going to move forward with these principles, but if we need to revise definitions, then there's some sort of order that seems like altered there. And also reinforcing Jennifer's, I think it's Jennifer's or Zoraya's question about implementation and how this process could be collaborative between agencies, because it seems like not sure if how can we make sure that this is easier for everyone involved by collaborating? It seems like so much work that each agency develop their own plan, whereas they can work together and develop 1 or 2 plans, or adjust a plan that works for everyone, something like more efficient. I don't know, just a thought, not very well put together, but out there.
I really appreciate that thought, Mariana. That felt clear to me. Thank you. Kaya.
So there was one of the points, you scrolled up, let me get to my version. There was one that kind of struck me, the get to the yes. I wasn't clear what that was about. Work towards a yes, number 15. I don't understand that. What are we trying to get them to buy into? Like, is it feels like we're trying to convince them of something, and
I think I can speak to this because I remember, if that's acceptable.
Please, Zoraia.
I know that I think this came from the feedback that we gave in the last session, where it felt like some folks were saying it's, and I think this also started with like Liz Curry's public comment, that it's easier just to say, no, we can't do this, than to try to find a way to incorporate what folks are asking for. And so if somebody's coming and saying, hey, I think we need this, just taking the, not saying this isn't in my job description, or not saying you need to go talk to somebody else, but trying to find a way to tell the community yes.
Okay. No, thank you. That's very helpful. I think that, yeah, that might need to be clarified as to who the audience is that's getting to the yes. It reads as like they're trying to convince us as the public. As the public, we have to get you to say what we're doing is okay. Do you know what I mean? Because that's often how people feel. So I think that's just that line could use just a couple more words. Thank you, and I'll pass.
Thank you. Rich.
I think I'm unmuted this time. Thank you for what everyone's adding here. It's helpful to have multiple minds and hearts on this. I think I don't have a lot to add right here except to back up what Mariana said. There have been references in process documents up to this point that these definitions, especially the populations under consideration, will be amended and adapted as we go along, but that hasn't been made clear how that happens. I kind of took it at face value, like they're still opening here, and I'm not sure where the openings are located, except in these meetings. So yeah, I second the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I think we can retouch on this process point once we close out this round of the circle. Trey, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Soraya made a good point at the beginning about not building a document full of principles to get to the principles. But I do wonder what kind of process we could create to educate agencies on these principles, whether there's some kind of a presentation or an engagement, platform that we could use, and even building on that further so that agencies could sign off that they have engaged with this meaningfully, and that they have staff who are dedicated to this, who have engaged with these principles and who understand them and who know how to go out and get more answers if they have questions as they implement them, so that it's not just a static document or a static approach to these. These are very dynamic principles. These are principles for action that are going to be tested by the way that people engage in real time. And so it's not just familiarity at the front end, but then how to continue to refine agency practices in the face of uncertainty or difficulty, or just that as you work on hard work, it gets harder, and people become weary or have a harder time keeping that patience that they start with. So that's what I'm thinking about, as a way to have these be, sort of renewing and helpful and inspiring for agency staff, and a resource that they can come to, return to, and count on to make sure that their work is focused on positive outcomes.
Thanks, Trey. Appreciate that. Jennifer.
I'm having two thoughts. One is just like harkening back to work that's been done. I think, for one thing, the recommendations in the report to the DEC touch on a lot of this, like the how for state agencies. But I'm curious about what the advisory council thinks in terms of, let's say, so in the very near future, 10 state agencies are all developing their community engagement plans. In my mind, there are some core principles that certainly will be in all of them, and maybe we can have, through the interagency committee, a shared approach to building those kind of core sets of community engagement plans. But then there's that unique approach that each agency is going to have to take. Department of Education, the why and the how and the who are going to be completely different than transportation or natural resources. So there will always be like an agency centered and focused activities that have to happen. And how do we not overburden community members? How do we avoid a situation where 10 community engagement contracts go out at the same time? That's sort of where I'm interested. Like, is there something the advisory council and the committee can put forward, some kind of strategic plan for that? Or and I'm curious what the council members think to that point. Is that maybe a piece of this, these guiding principles, working together? Maybe, but yeah, more specifically than that, how can we help it for, in the future, what's coming down the road, setting these agencies up, and not overburdening the community.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I think some of this will get picked up in the next part of our agenda, just in terms of like, how do we want to approach the work? Because so much of it is, how do these bodies guide the covered agencies through their piece of this puzzle? So this is a great example of that. So yeah, Susanna is the last person to close out this round of our circle. And then I know we're about 5 minutes from our first, no, 10:15 is our first public comment period, Alex. Is that real? Yeah, okay. Great. So I think we can, go to Susanna, and then I'm going to say a couple words about process, and then maybe we can reopen the circle kind of in that vein of what you're speaking to, Jennifer. first. So go ahead, Susanna.
Yeah, so these are the kinds of principles that we're routinely trying to encourage departments around the state to utilize. Some are more receptive than others, and one of the pushback that we get the most often tend to be the following. Number one, the timeline doesn't permit for this. Number two, there's no budget for what you're proposing. Number three, we're unfamiliar with how to do this and apprehensive about doing it. Number four, which actually should be number three or number two, is the legislation doesn't explicitly call for this, / we're not legally required to do this, / we recognize that this may be the spirit of the bill, but it's not in the four corners of what was written, / some variation of that. And so that is, or, number five is we don't have capacity. We would love to, but we don't have the staffing. Those are usually the five first pieces of pushback that we get on these kinds of recommendations. So thinking to the question of how can we guide state agencies to approach this kind of planning and implementation, I think those are the five pillars that you have to be able to knock down first. And just as has been said before, yeah, we put together a quick guide on engagement. Yes, what is it, Minnesota, I think, one of the states yonder, has a really great, is it Michigan? It's an M state. Has a really, really great guide on community engagement. The resources are out there. The guidance is out there. We can tailor it to be Vermont specific, but I think it's, I think that a lot of it is people don't want to do it and get it wrong, or they don't want to do it at all because they want to do minimally what they were asked. And maybe that's unfair to give those sweeping generalizations. I'm sure there's a lot that falls outside of those buckets. I know our office has wanted to engage in these processes in the past, and for other reasons we didn't, and that doesn't mean that we necessarily fall into one of those buckets. So I don't know, maybe it's wrong to make those kinds of assumptions, but it's just been our experience that those tend to be the first go-to excuses. And so when we think about how do we give guidance and encouragement to departments and agencies on how to do this, I think part of it, yes, is the encouragement and the guidance on how, but the how has been widely known and reasonably practiced around the state, enough that it's not really about figuring out how, it's about committing to doing it. And that has to start really early in a process, because, for example, if we're talking about implementation and community engagement and policy development, I mean, these are things that it's like the IA tool that we use, the impact assessment tool that we developed. People love using it as a final check once they've had an idea be fully baked and vetted and budgeted and all of that. But we tell people all the time, don't use the IA tool as a final check. You're supposed to be using it as early as possible in the policy development space so that you're asking yourself the right equity questions on the front end. Because then if you do it on the back end and you come up with all kinds of disparities that your proposal is going to surface, you're at the finish line. You're just going to say, oh, whoops, yeah, no, that's too bad, and then push it forward anyway. And that's not the point of using an equity impact assessment tool. So similarly, I think if we're talking about community engagement, it's different to say, let's engage the community early versus saying, let's do this at the end. Because engaging the community early means, for example, if I'm a legislator or I want to be in a legislator's ear, and I know that your drafting deadline is in December, a best practice would be for me to have been doing this over the summer so that I can have the community engagement already received, so that when I present this to you in the autumn or the late summer or whatever, your draft is informed by the community input. And so then when we get into the hearing room, you're not hearing people for the first time from the community talking about why this won't work, and then rushing to try to get a deadline in. So I've lost the thread of what I was saying, but that's how, that's some of what's coming up for me when I think about how do we get stronger at the state level in doing these kinds of things. Thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. Really, really helpful context. And I really appreciate hearing your experience. And also Susanna was in the interagency committee meeting as well, because our Office of Racial Equity has crossover representation. And I think that'll be really, really helpful in this process moving forward. You know, I don't know if folks had a chance to read all the minutes and notes from that meeting with the interagency committee. But you know, these are big questions, like everything that Susanna just sort of listed out, those areas of resistance that come up, we're certainly named and acknowledged in the room by the interagency committee members as concerns that they have about what it means to take this back to their agencies. I wouldn't necessarily say like personal resistance necessarily, but the knowledge that, you know, this is not an easy thing to take home and just put into place. And it raised a lot of questions about what is the nature of these principles. Are these aspirational? Is this a commitment document? Are these things that, should we be framing principles as advocate in the legislature for funding to do this? So these are things that this is why we have the joint conversation in a week, is we really need to sort of meet each other and how we want to work through some of that together. So, you know, this will come up in the process. I would love for us to keep going around in our time and continue down this path. Another process consideration. So the plans, the first round of agency plans are due in July 2025. So we'll have this principles document, but in addition, Alex and I have been crafting kind of a guide to any of the major deliverables, whether that's for us to use or the covered agencies to use. And so that guide is meant to be basically kind of lay out, like, how would I even begin to approach what the law is asking me to do right now. There's a lot of opportunity to take some of these comments I'm hearing and ideas I'm hearing, and I'd love to keep hearing about how can we assistance. To Trey's point, how do we roll this out and educate the staff who are supposed to do something with it? How can we honor, you know, to Jennifer's point, the fact that each agency will need to really have a tailored approach, but that we want to have a way to be coordinated and to make sure there's accountability. What kind of role do you all want to play? What kind of role do we expect our interagency committee members to play? So these are things that we can work out with each other over the next couple months, so that when we get to the point that we want to sort of pass this on in some ways to the covered agencies to do their part of the work, that we have sort of a process baked in around that will help us have more education, shared knowledge, shared expectations, and accountability. So I wanted to mention that. The other piece I want to mention to Rich's question is that the environmental justice law asks us to revisit all the definitions. Maybe this card to pass. All the definitions in the law every 5 years. But the environmental justice focus population, very specifically, there's an ask for us to send any suggested edits to that by December 1st of this year. So that's actually something right around the corner, something that, again, you know, there's a reason that we kind of scheduled out meetings between now and now in November. That'll be a really big piece for us to revisit as a group. And I really want to hear your all feedback about just how you want to approach thinking that through as a group, as the advisory council, with input from interagency committee, from the public. What can Alex and I do to facilitate a process that makes us feel like our suggestions on that front feel really, really thoughtful and well vetted, and really, you know, from the perspective of the community we're trying to identify, right? You know, centering that this definition really feels like it actually meets the needs of the communities we're trying to serve. So, so that's just, again, another process piece I wanted to elevate, so that we all have that December 1st, 2023 sort of due date in our minds as something we'll be working on. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to, at 10:05, take another 10 minutes to go through our circle again. We can just keep building on this sort of process conversation, any of the things I just mentioned, and whatever is up. Don't worry so much about prompts. And we'll stop at 10:15 wherever we are in the circle, just to give folks from the public who've joined us some space to also contribute to the dialogue. So back to the top, Soraya, reopen the floor.
Great. Yeah, I think I'm having, it's like, I think it's, because even like thinking about this process or for a different panel, I was reviewing a bunch of the justice-based reports, and a lot of them were like, oh, we feel like we're not getting, kind of the same concern that Kaya brought to us, that it's like we feel like we're not getting compensated, and it's hard to, and hearing, you know, that folks are concerned both on this side and on the interagency side about how this is going to happen given the restraints. It just feels like we need a more fundamental culture shift on like doing less and doing it better that we can't control. And that's not, this is my non-helpful part of the feedback. But yeah, I think it's just, how do we really implement this throughout without, if it's not a broader cultural change at the agencies? I'm complete. Thank you.
Thanks, Soraya. Brittany?
Yeah. Can you all hear me okay? So I switched to my headset. Okay.
Yes.
So I agree with what Soraya is saying too, and I think that when we're looking at process and we're thinking ahead in terms of one of the areas that continues to come up for me too is like our timeline with all of this and how we're operating. And I worry too in terms of our how we'll be engaging each other in this process, and how we are like mainly in terms of like how we're going to get this work done and the time that we have to do it. I do think that it's important that folks are compensated. I think that you know, I think that there is recognition for what a lift this is. And I do think that we need to, that also needs to translate into how folks are compensated. And that's really what's coming up for me right now. And maybe it's just what Soraya mentioned in terms of Kaya's email, and I didn't respond to that via email, and so then I just feel like it's important right now to also acknowledge that and stating that I support that as well with folks being compensated.
Thanks, Brittany. Gail?
So I have two questions. How will we be able to do this work in 8 meetings? Was that talked about in the last meeting? Because as everybody knows, I was not able to hear anything.
Just direct response. I don't know that, I think we touched on it a little bit in that meeting, Gail, but there was no kind of clear decisions made or anything about that. It's sort of an open question, and I hear you loud and clear. It's something we could talk about revisiting the legislature about.
And my other question is, Rich had mentioned that this is focused toward humans. Were you alluding to land and wildlife that is not included?
Rich, you're welcome to direct answer that.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My my intent in bringing that up is to speak to everyone and anyone other than human. Our operative foundation for existence is dependent on what's other than ourselves, and it's not brought into the so-called calculus or equation here at all. And if we only focus on the impacts on humans, pretty soon we don't have anything left to work with, to engage with. So everything, it's not in here. I'm trying to leave the door open. I'll be up front here. I'm trying to leave the door open here for eventually this state and everyone to have a rights of the natural world amendment to our legal system. And this is heading toward it. It's been ignored. So that's like way down the road if it ever happens. But if we don't start to admit to it, it will never happen. Yeah, that's huge. Talk about a big lift. But we can start somewhere. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Rich. I'll
Thanks,
pass.
Rich. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Gail. Yeah, and I invite us thinking about a principle that could speak to that, so we can simmer on that together. Trey, go ahead, and then just note that we're 3 minutes on our public comment period.
Yeah, could be brief. Well, just want to again thank Rich for that, and plenty to dig into when we have more time. The future must include multiple perspectives on that right and who defines that right. But going back to process and Zariah, there's a comment from Zariah, but also one that Jennifer put into the chat about how we drive this into agency budgets and priorities. That process really begins in early June, and it continues through the summer and fall until the governor gives a budget address in January. And so we're for this year, for the budget that they're already creating, I think we need to reach out through the interagency council now and ask how existing FTEs are including this in the job description and in the work plans, and then what additional resources are going to be added in the next budget to do this work. This is not one of those new initiatives at the state level that wasn't supported by the administration. It was, very much supported. And so with that authorizing environment, we want to make sure that there's money where the mouth is. And I'll just leave it there. But I so want to go back to what Rich was talking about and spend the rest of the morning talking to you all about that. That's just huge and groundbreaking thinking. That lawsuit in Montana really, that the children brought, the students brought, is something that we should be thinking about as well.
I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass, but really support thinking about a budget request now.
Yep.
Me
Yeah,
too.
one of the things that we did okay. Yeah, one of the things we spoke about in the interagency committee, we did touch on just our approach to this upcoming legislative session. That's something we definitely will revisit as a full group in the joint meeting, because there's just lots of moving pieces there. And, in addition to things that are very specific to the law, the per diem question, the number of meetings we can have, there's also what would it look like for us to start to encourage agencies to coordinate their asks around capacity for this work on an ongoing annual basis, because it's never going to be a one and done thing, and have more of a coordinated coalition leveraging this moment in this law to do that. So I think we could definitely make sense that we would have the interagency committee members. We've already sort of teed this up, start to take stock of, to your point, Trey, our FTE and existing capacity, existing resources that should be doing community engagement. So those are folks that we need to train into doing it in alignment with these principles versus where there's gaps, and to get a sense of that. So I see Kaya's hand up. Go for it. And then I'm going to open up for public comment.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think that this is important for us to recognize that the buy-in from agencies has been, we will allocate resources, and that is towards a specific member of personnel rather than this work here. And that is an issue. There are special sessions taking place. There are committees that are still meeting. So January is great for supporting the future. It does nothing for us now and the expectations of the labor that have to happen between here and January. Like that doesn't, it's meaningless to me to say we're going to push in January when there are conversations happening now about the budget and there are opportunities and an obligation that was abandoned. It was abandoned wholesale. So I'm just going to leave that there, but I would love to, I'm going to yield my time for the public. Thanks.
Thanks, Kaya. Heard. Great. So folks from the public, you're welcome to bring whatever you want to bring. You're welcome to add to the prompt and conversation we're having about the principles process, whatever feels relevant. So go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Great. Earl, go ahead. And if you could just introduce yourself again, pronouns, and just so for folks who are less familiar, that would be really helpful for everybody.
Yeah, Looney, thank you. Earl Hatley, he, him. So I want to just say thank you to my Beneke brother, Rich, for raising this beyond humans to rights of nature and rights to clean environment, such as they have in Montana, and we just saw the results of that case. I've been involved with the environmental justice movement since back in 1989 when we were first organizing this, and there was a lot of human-centricness to this. However, I was more involved with the Indigenous Environmental Network, Tom Goldtooth and those folks at the time, and we were also talking about this in this way that Rich is mentioning. And so there's always been an Indigenous side to this EJ movement. And I think that in light of what we're seeing with the climate and also the success of rights of nature and what can be done with that and the rights to a clean environment, we can now see the importance and the necessity for incorporating this into the definition of EJ. And in our EJ work, the Indigenous community has been a big part of the EJ work around the country. And my former home state, Oklahoma, where we have 39 federally recognized tribes located in the area where I came from, with 10 federally recognized tribes in it, in a county where the entire county is a Superfund site. Tribes can't practice their culture because of vast contamination, including the drinking water lake. And so what we see is it's not just human-centric, but where the animals, the plants, it's all contaminated in that county. And so its subsistence is impossible. And so all of nature is caught up in this web. And we have to look at this holistically. And so getting to your principles on this list, those are great principles, but without definition, this reminds me a lot of free, prior, informed consent, where we see the UN has spelled this out as the rights of indigenous peoples, for example. However, how it's practiced within the US and Canada has a whole different meaning. And So I'm looking at these principles and they're only as good as the agencies define and practice them. So they're very vague. And I really have some heartburn about that. I'll stop there. Believe me.
Thank you, Earl. Let's see. I'm looking at the queue here. Who do we have next on our? I think I saw. Does anyone else see the order of the hands? I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with that right now.
I think it's Mike next. Mike.
Great,
and then-
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Mike. I'm calling in from Royalton. So can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just wanted to check on that. I have to keep my video off just in order to keep it live here. Yeah, thank you for this and thanks for accepting comments. I'm in Royalton. I agree with the two previous comments. Kaya in particular said something about can we please deal with this now instead of January? And yes, absolutely. I'm calling, my comment is in the world of pesticides and environmental justice with regard to, basically people who live along the road and along the railroad tracks and in the less resourced communities of the state get zero attention in terms of where we're going to spray for mosquitoes. And I mean, I got the railroad tracks right behind my house, and there's zero interest in the state of Vermont in addressing the issue of pesticides and water quality. Zero interest. I want to make sure you please make note of that. The Department of Health has zero interest. The Agency of Agriculture just approves the permit process and moves forward. There's plenty of us who've been trying to address this subject since the late 90s, and it goes nowhere. And we're going to keep pushing and we're going to keep advocating. But my second point today is that the process, I mean, thank you for trying to make it inclusive and thank you for reaching out and all of the above, but I got to go to work. It's very hard to participate in the process, whether it's the Forest Service or the state or water quality issues or any of the above. The process just drags on and on for years, and the everyday people, no matter what, it's a question of socioeconomics, not gender, not race, not that as far as being able to participate in the process. But when you got to go out and work every day, 7 days a week, you can't be at a meeting at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 8 a.m. You might have time at 9 o'clock at night for 5 minutes. So I'll stop blabbering on, but thank you for taking the comment, and you can certainly keep my email and I'll participate as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Hannah, your hand up next.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me okay?
Out of curiosity,
yes.
Awesome. So this is Hannah Giannotti. I am with the Bennington County Conservation District. And just approaching this conversation with some curiosity, going back to the topics that we're talking about, kind of the how and the processes that are being put in place. And please let me know if this is kind of somewhere else that's maybe not mentioned in the draft or the reference material. But I'm noticing with Principle 18 and the topic of accountability, and then the theme in Principle 8 and Principle 11 around agencies learning from each other and trying to break down these silos. I'm curious how the council is maybe thinking about providing some standardization or working across agencies to have standardization in how success is being measured and defined for these different initiatives, so that you can, I would say ease the process of learning and iterating from one another. I'm just imagining if there's different goalposts and different ways that this is being measured, in the future, if you leave that up to just the agencies to decide, then it becomes kind of hard to figure out, well, what is working and how can we share that? So I was more just curious how, or if this is being kind of thought about moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't see any other hands up. Is anybody who wants to speak from the public who didn't figure out how to raise their hand? Because that happens sometimes. Okay. In that case, I'd love to welcome anybody to the advisory council if you want to speak to any of the comments you heard. I see there's some chat back and forth to share info, which is great. Welcome that as well. I can also speak to Hannah's question, but I would like to open up to the advisory council first. Yeah, so I'll just jump in just directly to your question, Hannah, about process. Yes, it's not necessarily clearly defined in the law what that's meant to look like, but there's been very clear intentions stated by the members of the interagency committee to use this as an opportunity to really improve coordination, cross-agency learning, resource sharing. And I also think that this group, the advisory council, in this sort of consultation role, that, you know, we want to really be embedded at different, you know, at every stage of the work with these covered agencies, you know, that there's an opportunity for some building in of accountability. And so actually the next half of the meeting, we're going to get a little bit more into what is our process? How do we step into this larger role of making sure that the agencies who are ultimately responsible for implementing whatever, you know, sort of wisdom comes out of this group, have the sort of guidance and direction that'll make that happen well. So it's absolutely being thought about, and it's not a fully formed plan yet. We're sort of in that planning phase together right now. Okay. Great. Well, we are moving right on time, which is always a lovely feeling. It's 10:27. We're scheduled to take a 15-minute break. And when we regroup, we're going to, like I said, get more into kind of our picking up the conversation from our joint meeting, the breakout group meeting conversation you had about like, how do we want to work together? What are our needs? How do we do this? So yeah, thank you all so much for the feedback on the principles. I guess super generative, really excited to sort of incorporate and work that in. There will be some follow-up around that this week. And yeah, let's go ahead and take a break. Alex just dropped in the chat the document we'll be working on when we come back together at 10:45. If anyone wants to preview it. And yeah, we'll be back in 17 minutes. Thank you all so much. All right, folks want to start to get resettled. Ourselves back to our computers. I hope folks were able to get a decent break. Can't believe how fast 18 minutes can go. And yeah, we're gonna drop back into the last hour and 15 minutes of our meeting. Get into part 2 of our agenda. I'm just gonna start rolling and assume folks will be trickling back to their computer. And we originally had wanted to do a little bit of a circle go around prompt at the beginning of the meeting, just for a space for folks to sort of reflect on like, how are you feeling as an advisory council member? So we're gonna actually kick off a little bit with some of that before we get back into the weeds of like, what are we doing and how are we doing it? How are we meeting? Just like give ourselves some space to be humans engaged in this process together that's messy and that we have to define as we go and iterative. And yeah, so we're going to use our same circle order. We're going to kind of stick with our circle process. We have an hour to jump in as an advisory council around this question of who we are and how we want to approach our work. And then we'll close out with another 15 minutes of public comment at 11:45. Yeah, so let's just go ahead, with our circle, and I think the prompt is in the chat there. So yeah, so the question, just so when we get to you in the circle, if you could just share like the law sort of queued up specific representation for the advisory council. So you could just name sort of like what your particular role in the advisory council is as defined by the law. We'll also drop in the chat a link. Oh, it's already in there. There's a link to a website that has the list and bios for advisory council members, including which perspective you were meant to represent, in case you don't remember, which is fine. It's not always super clear, obvious. And yeah, so you can just make a mention of that and then just go around and just do a little bit of a temperature check. How are you feeling sort of stepping into this work at this stage? And in that, anything you want to share about any kind of recent ideas you've had or maybe challenges you run into trying to get started, sort of doing what it is in your mind needs to happen for you to feel like you're holding that role of representation in a way that feels good to you. So yeah, in the interest of time, if we can try and keep our feedback kind of in like the 3-minute range or less, that's great. And if you've got a lot to get off your chest, get off your chest. So yeah, let's go ahead and go around, do that, and then we can start to get more into what we want to do as next steps as a group. So with that, Zariah, if you're willing to kick us off again, if not, you can pass and we'll make it back around to you.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to jump off at 11. So Zariah, she, her. I am a Burlington City Councilor and representing municipal governments. Temperature check. I'm feeling a little like I feel fine. I think the process is going well. I feel good about the folks that are included. But I do, in terms of like public engagement, I don't feel like we have a good enough understanding of what we're going to do or how we're going to do it to involve the public yet. I think this is one of those things where if we engage them too early, it feels like it drags on and they don't really feel included just for the sake of having been invited. So I guess I'm feeling a little anxious to get some clarity on what we're doing and how we're doing it. I understand that we've gone over the law many times, but the nitty gritty of what that means so that we can get input on things that I think the public will really care about, because I think there is a lot that folks do care about, and inviting participation in a way and at a time that is meaningful. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Zariah. Brittany.
Hi all, Brittany Watson, she, her. I am the social justice representative. I am the EJ committee chairperson for the Rutland area NAACP, member of Relief, and the EJ network manager, and So for me, in terms of temperature check and how I'm feeling in my role as a community representative, still trying to adjust to the meeting formats and just seeing, you know, coming at it more from a lens of wanting to really consider the groups that I'm a part of, and how I can best what I can best get from this space, and how I can bring what's discussed here back to the groups that I'm a part of. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Brittany. Gail? Gail, I can't hear you if you're trying to speak. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pass to Mariana and hold bringing Gail back into the circle as we keep going, and maybe we can just check in tech side if things are okay. Alex, if you can help with that. Mariana, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Phoebs. My name is Mariana, and I am the food security advisor or representative, and I work as an outreach manager for Hunger Free Vermont. Most of the work we do is with partners and community organizations that work directly with people who are impacted by food insecurity and hunger. So our organization doesn't work directly necessarily with the populations, although one could argue that anybody that works in any space and inhabit any organization could also be impacted by food insecurity. Food insecurity is touching us all in one way or another, or has touched us in one way or another in our childhood, or might touch us in our future when we're older. So I feel that I feel confident that the spaces that I work with will be good spaces to bring messages back and forth between what we're trying to do here and what I do over there in these other spaces. We have 10 hunger councils around the state of Vermont. These are regional, and they gather people and advocates and organizations and educators interested in working to combat food insecurity and hunger. Alex and Phoebs already have come to some of our meetings. I think that is something that we should be thinking about when we implement this community engagement, is like that we go to the communities and the spaces that are already created, and we ask for permission to participate and bring our message to them, as opposed to be always expecting that they come to our spaces and contribute. Some feeling that I have that is, I'm not sure what to do with it, is that as we go with this process, some people from the public seems to be coming to us with concerns about whatever specific environmental burdens they may be having, and I don't feel we are in any position to provide any answers. I saw Jennifer, for instance, just responded to Mike saying, "Oh, I'm in your conservation district, reach out to me." But I would love to start thinking about how we can be prepared to better answer those questions, and how can we direct people to direct people that they can be follow up with. So that's something, like, I feel like powerless in that sense. I don't know much about who would be good to respond to these comments, but I don't feel prepared at this point. And I'm trying to see the prompts and if there's anything else that I want to share at this point, but I think I'm fine. If anything else, I'll get back.
Thanks, Mariana. That felt like it was right on. Appreciate you. Kaya, you're next.
Okay. Hey there, everyone. Kaya Morris, she, her pronouns. I am a member of the advisory council as an equity consultant. I'm also a member of Relief. I am also on the Environmental Justice Network and engaged in this work nationally and internationally through Oxfam America. How I'm imagining myself within this work is still evolving. I am coming in with an open heart, but also with some caution, just to be aware of capacity for what I'm able to bring into this space. I'm grateful for the staff that are kind of spearheading all of this, but as we're moving forward and thinking about what direct roles we play in closing the loop between this work and the communities themselves, I want to be very clear about how those definitions look and, again, what is anticipated or expected of us. I hope that we will constantly move in a spirit of care and protection for each other. I mean, I do have concerns as well that even as we are asking organizations and entities to pony up to try to make this work possible, that those of us that are here still in a volunteer capacity are not seen as separate from that kind of restorative and reparations that are necessary in order to make this work feasible for all of us. So, yeah, this is I'm a little tired, a little weary, just so, but I'm grateful to be here, and I will go ahead and pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaya. Rich?
Kwai Mziwi. Rich here. I didn't give pronouns earlier. I use awani and someone in the Abenaki language, and in English, he and his. I am here as a representative for Native communities in what is now called Vermont in general. I want to affirm that I am one person speaking, and that's, you know, all I can do. I will endeavor to represent for others to the degree that I can. We are a community of communities, so multiple there, and our community is within a community of communities with all of you. So we will bring what we can. Communication and reporting back is always a challenge. Trying to make sure that you're there for as many people as possible. And when I say people, again, it's not just the human people. What are we missing? This is really a daunting and overwhelming process. It's a full-time occupation all by itself, and we're all spread really thin. But I'm glad that we're starting. I guess I'll just leave it there right now.
Thanks, Rich. Go ahead, Trey.
Thanks, Phoebes. Well, I was answer the second question first, about the temperature check. I feel some sense, not of reticence, but of needing to explain how VHCB fits in. But Mariana, I appreciated your comments about being in an entity that works with other entities as opposed to directly with folks. VHCB works with the affordable housing community, and through our partners affects people who seek and obtain affordable housing. We work with the Land Access and Opportunity Board, which is working. There are several members of the board here on this call, working on issues of access and equity in housing and in land enterprise and land ownership. And then in our conservation mission, we're leading what we hope will be a transformational look at the state's goals for land protection, so that we bring forward some of the concerns that not just Rich, but also Earl talked about it, and many people nodded in agreement about thinking about the biosphere as the entity that we protect for the future, future generations of humans, future generations of non-humans in our conservation work, which is a transformational change, not at VHCB, but I think statewide, that the climate action plan and the passage of Act 59 last year really helped us to usher forward. So I feel like VHCB does stand at a crossroads, but when this bill was being passed and we expressed our interest in supporting, we were asked which council it made sense to be more on. And I'm glad that we said the advisory council, not the interagency, because we're a step removed from state government. And so I do hope that both allows us to work through all those partners, but also we are, a step closer to state government than a lot of not-profits. So we might be able to help in making those conversations happen, especially around capacity, since this is, for me, this is something I do as part of my job, not something that I have to fit in. And so it is part of my work plan. It is part of my FTE. And so for others around the circle who are struggling to find the time and capacity for this, VHCB could be a good bridge role on this council as well. Anyway, my temperature is like warm and positive and fuzzy, and it's been a hard, long summer for lots of reasons and for lots of people. So Kaya, I hear you. It's daunting and it's exhausting to think about where we want to get to just by December 3rd, and then the meaningful change that has to begin happening after that. So thanks. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Trey. Jennifer.
Hi again. So the more that you'll hear from me, the more that I'll talk about conservation districts. They're an incredibly unique, important, overlooked unit of government that most people, especially in Vermont, don't know about. And so what districts are, it's really, we were birthed out of the New Deal back in the 30s, and we're decentralized, democratic decision-making bodies designed for local input into environmental and natural resource decision-making and land use. Again, extremely underutilized in the state, but we are here, have existed for over 80 years. So just to be clear, in my role, I'm a staff member of a conservation district. There are 14 districts throughout the state. And my supervisors are publicly elected supervisors of the district. So my supervisors are all residents of our district. And I cover some of Orange, some of Windsor, and like 2 towns in Addison and 1 town in Rutland County. Our council, however, the NRCC that has a seat on this council, is, according to our statute, an agency of the state, but nobody really recognized us as such. We're not really sure what that even means. We don't really receive very much state funding, where our individual districts are almost entirely grant funded. But we really are, we live at the juncture of federal, state, and private money. And so we coordinate resources and funding and get it out the door directly to community members. The majority of the folks that I work with are farmers, but I also work with really any land stewards, but also municipalities, schools, and individuals who want to weigh in on how funding is distributed, especially from the federal government. We have a really close connection to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. And so through our ongoing public input processes, we send recommendations up the chain to the state and to the federal government on how local residents want money spent in their community for, and there's an acronym for this, I'm sure you can imagine that, but soil, water, air, plants, animals, humans, and energy. So yeah, I love talking about conservation districts. I taught a class on it. I've traveled across the country and visited over 17 different states, visited conservation district and USDA offices to see how it works in other states. And there's a lot to learn from other states. Then coming to Vermont, I was really surprised at how underutilized this sort of arm for community engagement is. So I'm really excited to bring that here. And I think the rest of my comments will be better for the next section of this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Go ahead, Susanna.
Yeah, so first of all, sorry I'm zoomed in again. It's a weird thing that happens with Teams when my camera goes off and on again. The group that I'm, Susanna Davis, she series pronouns, racial equity director. So the group that I'm here representing is the Office of Racial Equity. And it was mentioned earlier that we're on both the advisory council and the interagency council because we never tire of meetings, and also because it was important to us to have some level of crossover and being able to be in league with members of the community we serve, in addition to being in league with our colleagues around government. So how a temperature check on how I'm feeling in that role. I think it's important, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels in the conversations that are being had here and the conversations being had in the Interagency Council. And I think that, yes, there's a lot of current and recent efforts and challenges that we've seen here, but there's a lot of expertise in the room, and this is figure outable. Yeah, I'm listening to a lot of what's been said and reminded of the principle that I read out today that includes the acronym WAIT, standing for Why Am I Talking? I think I've probably talked enough, so we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Susanna. And then Gail, if you're with us now to bring us home. There's a prompt in the chat, but just kind of sharing like which group we are here representing and how we're temperature check feeling about that, and anything we want to share about our experience stepping into that role recently.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my temperature is warm. However, I am struggling with being the representative of mobile home communities, and the mobile home community that I live in fortunately does not have many of these concerns and issues, maybe one or two. But there's other mobile home communities of the 200 in Vermont that absolutely do. But my struggle is connecting with them. So of 25 that I reached out to, 3 have gotten back to me, 1 in a survey and 2 with an email. So it becomes a little frustrating because the questions I'm asking them is, give me the input so that I can bring it to the table. But being the president of the community I live in, this is not an unfamiliar territory at all. It is so difficult to get people to engage. And one of the people in our community, I had said, just in conversation, his answer to me, which was, it's difficult when people are negative about anything to do with state agency and don't feel anything is really going to be done. And his answer to me was, I don't know anything about Environmental Justice Committee, and I don't really have any input, and let the state figure it out. So it gnaws at you, because I'm looking at those principles and I really try, I don't walk away with, well, he's a negative character. I really try to engage and let them know that's the whole purpose of having this committee, is for us to get some work done. So so all the communities are recognized. My entity is a little different than yours. I don't work in this field. Years ago, I had started a president's meetings for the rock co-ops. Out of 20 of them, 5 showed up. And we all have different struggles, but we all have the same we have the same issues with infrastructure and some of these environmental concerns. So I feel warm. I don't feel warm and fuzzy. So I'll leave it at that and I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Okay, I think that brings us full circle. Thank you everyone for sharing. I know we're sort of diving in the work and we're just really getting to know one another. So just sort of cherish these moments for us to hear a little bit more about what we're bringing to the work and what we're holding in that. So yeah, and I think it just really helps to kind of cue up the next part of the conversation, which is about how do we want our work to sort of unfold moving forward. And like I said, it's an ongoing iterative conversation, but just want to kind of pick up where we left off at the joint meeting on July 18th and see if we can maybe move a little bit further along and making some decisions about roles or things we'd like to try on, or what it would take for us to, to a lot of folks' points, start to like really clarify what our role is and what we're committing to and what we're not committing to. Talk about what are our most important process steps. Is the first step in this process, to Kaya's point, dealing with equity and payment for this group, right? Before we go to the next step of fighting for compensation for the larger community and community engagement. So all of these things are on the table, and how we do it together is on the table. Alex and I have sort of boiled down the kind of like 3 topics on this. So one is, how does this group want to engage the public and sort of be a liaison for public engagement in this process? 2 is, what role does this entity want to play in terms of agency accountability and supporting what it looks like for agencies to step forward in this work, and sort of this role of giving advice and consultation to that. And then 3 is just like, how do y'all want to approach governance as a group? Yeah, meeting routine, what we want the nature of our meetings to look and feel like. Are there, just smaller process things that we want to think through about how this group works together? So those are sort of the 3 buckets of work. I would like, just in terms of thinking about consensus process, when you're giving feedback or making a comment, if you're specifically bringing forward a proposal that you would like us to start to temperature check, like consensus potential, to move it forward as an agreement of the group, just say that really explicitly. That's just helpful. And we can make a note of that and move it through a process, so we don't just talk about ideas, but actually start to maybe agree on a few that we want to move forward. So Alex has the potential action steps document in the chat, and that document is grouped into those 3 groupings I just mentioned. It has notes specifically just straight out of the July 18th meeting that came out of the breakout conversation of what needs you all have. And then we put together a few suggestions of potential action steps to jumpstart conversation. But yeah, I think what I'm going to do is sort of open the floor at this point. And I guess we can just keep going through. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just open the floor at this point, I think. And folks can raise their hand if they want to chime in on any specific ideas, and ways we want to move forward, or So I'm gonna stop talking and see if that's enough prompt to maybe start to generate conversation. Floor is open.
I can start briefly. Yeah. Thank you. This is a great format and simple to follow, and so on and on. So thank you, Alex, Phoebes, and everyone involved. I would like to suggest like a specific proposal for next time, and this is within the how we're going to reach and how we are going to gather community input, and how we are going to engage with communities to let them know that we exist and that we're doing this work. And I would suggest that we look for a list of regional happenings that are already in place, in which we could insert ourselves somehow without imposing, just by requesting politely to attend to, whether it's a gathering, an event, a meeting, something that is existing, that is community grassroots, and that it has some space for us. And we go there and we introduce ourselves and we host part of our meeting in there. I don't know if we could ask for a whole hour or for a whole an hour and a half, but maybe we could ask for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and we briefly introduce ourselves and we have our public input time, and we bring up key prompts, and we start engaging with people in the way they are, and coming to them, as opposed to, just like Mike said, I gotta go to work. How can I attend a meeting from 9 to 12? Who can do that? So that would be a proposal. I don't know if I express it in the correct way for everybody to understand, but something on those lines. And then another thing would be that the next time that that flyers or materials are developed in order to invite people to our meetings, we get a chance to revise them before, so that we could say, hey, this language could be changed into this other more friendly language. And I go back to that other suggestion that I said. Instead of saying we're looking for public input, we could say something like, we're looking to hear from you. And then, you know, this is just one example. The list can go on. We could look for replacement language to sound more inviting, more engaging, and more, you know, whatever people out there that they can feel like, oh, they want to hear from me. I mean, I'm thinking what Gail said. People are hard to engage, but maybe because we're saying, would you like to go to engage in public input for environmental justice? That sounds like, ooh, I am not an expert. I'm not going that meeting. I don't know what to say. They're going to speak fast. I'm going to be excluded. So if we change the language as we invite people, maybe that will attract more people, and so on and on.
Thank you, Mariana. I'm going to try and reflect back so that we understand proposal on the table and can move forward. One, in terms of you all having an opportunity to review flyers, I can just go ahead and say, and Alex and I are happy to invite those opportunities. So we'll just go ahead and do that. What I heard in your first proposal was that we should be compiling a list of sort of relevant regional, local events that are happening. And I heard kind of 3 potential things to do with that list, which is we could either maybe just attend those events, and we could, that may or may not include asking for space on the agenda to present a little bit about what's going on with the EJLR, get feedback. But I also heard you suggesting maybe we try to schedule our actual meetings, our business meetings, to line up with a community event. So it could be a both and opportunity of being present with those folks and having our meetings. So I don't know if we want to, one, I guess, you know, it was already sort of on Alex and I radar that would make sense to compile a list of regional events and opportunities for us to tap into. So any concerns from this group about us just having as a next step, putting that together and asking for feedback on that? Cool. And then the second set of the part of the question is, what would we like to do? How would we like to maybe reach out to those events or plug in? So does anybody have kind of additional thoughts or clarifications about that piece of things that they want to chime in on? I will note that we have talked about maybe about trying to have our joint meetings sort of rotate more regionally so that we could have a more intentional built-in public engagement period. I hadn't thought about it as far as like actually lining it up with other folks' events. Definitely open to that. Very open to us thinking about time of day and scheduling to line up, to your point, Mariana. So yeah, any thoughts just from folks maybe more generally about our public meetings and how and where we want to structure those to facilitate public engagement? Okay, let's keep this open on the table, and just open up any other thoughts, proposals, ideas, next steps can be, yeah, let's keep the brainstorm going. We've got this one in the queue of things to chew on.
Mariana put on the chat, this is Carla Raimundi. Mariana put on the chat that it might be too complex, but worth exploring.
Thanks, Carla.
Jennifer, do you want to go ahead?
Jennifer, yeah.
Sure. Is this like just open time to put ideas out for, okay. So, something I've been thinking about and other people have said, but, how this meeting and this council space is almost to some extent the only place for some people to come to at this point to report on things that are broken. And something that I've been doing just through this latest disaster, and dealing with all the different grant programs and the issues that all this de-siloing cause, in reality on the ground, is keeping a chart. I've been calling it just broken things, but I've been keeping a spreadsheet every single time I find something that's silly or stupid or harmful, and I put it, in my spreadsheet. I'd love for this council to have some kind of active database from the complaints that we hear and the problems that communities come here with. And then we can hold, ourselves and the interagency accountable to it and just keep checking in with that, to see if we actually can resolve, sometimes it's really simple policy stuff that's just needs to be changed, the language of how things work. So yeah, that's something I'd really like for us to have, like an open database of almost like our own complaint process, but without making it too formal, just a database of comments and problems that we're hoping to fix.
Thanks, Jennifer. And so there's a proposal for us to sort of maintain some sort of database or like written log of concerns that are being brought to these meetings around environmental issues, generally, like that are happening, issues around policy, so that there's some accountability to that being documented. And any concerns with that, or just things that give folks pause or around consenting to that being an action step that this group does? Yeah, Trey.
I don't know if this is a concern, because I think it's really important to have findings that are actionable for state decision makers. We talked earlier about the budget process and finding ways to translate from the environment, from the places and people, that these are things that need to be addressed. But I would want to focus that in that direction, too, is, it create a manageable process for for us as representatives, or for people directly, to say these are issues that you're addressing already, that we, here's some examples, or here's facts about that, or here are new issues that might also need to be on the table. And so some way to do that, and then to figure out how does that align with existing programs and funding opportunities, or do new funding opportunities and programs need to be developed? So that it's, if the end goal is to dedicate a certain percentage of budget and funding towards these goals, state agencies would really want to know what would be directly helpful. That's often a problem within state government, is knowing exactly how to get to shovel-ready projects, as they say. So that's just not a concern about that. But it's just a focusing thought, maybe. The other one thing for brainstorm listing that I wanted to throw out there is, if we're going to be attending regional meetings, or first to listen but maybe to also talk, is that could help us to shape a set of agreed upon talking points. But we should be really consistent about what we say our work is, what outcomes are, what this process is, what the opportunities for participation are, and when people can expect results, so that we're not promising too soon, like somebody said earlier, and dragging it out for people.
Thanks, Trey. Great. Yeah, so another proposal, just to work on a set of agreed upon talking points for this group to have. And that speaks a little bit, I think, to Mariana's point about y'all getting more feedback on flyer or outreach materials that can serve to be talking points to So Alex and I would absolutely love to support the creation of whatever outreach materials are helpful. And I think, yeah, moving forward on a document with talking points would be something we could add to that for you all to work, and we could circulate some drafts and start to get feedback. Great. I do want to draw attention to a couple of next steps that I know are sort of kind of front and center a little bit of on our minds. One is kind of managing the budget that we have for community engagement, just because things move slow in state government. So I think the sooner we can start to get a sense of how we want to approach and access those funds, it'll be helpful. And there's sort of two pathways for that. One is you all through A&R sort of, Alex and I facilitating access to the funds somewhat directly in terms of allowable uses. So there's an engagement event and we want to pay for meeting space or, pay for materials or things. So right now we can start to access and facilitate that happening. I think it's more about you all feeling like you have a plan and approach that you're ready to tap into. But I just want you to know that the money exists. Like we do have resources, at a minimum $110,000 set aside right now for engagement work. So that's one thing that can happen. The other piece is we could be putting out our request for proposals, or a competitive bidding process for a community-based organization to support community engagement on this work. So those are folks who could potentially put in a bid to be community liaisons, helping bridge our connections to communities, doing some of the event hosting. Paying stipends is one area that it can be really helpful to have a contract, because it can be hard for the state to directly pay stipends, but we can usually manage to make it happen through a contractor. So I wanted to just put that piece out there for folks to think about, and maybe maybe we just need to get clear on how we want to do engagement before we talk about putting money toward it, but it does exist, and they can be parallel conversations. And a request for proposal from beginning to end to get a contractor on board, we should just expect could take 4 to 6 months. So just love for it to happen faster, and it's state government. So pause there, and yeah, reopen the floor. It could be about that, but it could also be about anything else on folks' minds around this set of next steps and what we want to do as a group.
If I could jump in, sorry, I can't, for some reason it doesn't let me access the chat now that I'm on my phone. I am wary of hiring one organization just because I think, as I think about the populations that we're each representing, I could just see it being really difficult to have one organization that truly can plug into all of the different populations. So yeah, I think to some extent it would be easier just to one, I still don't know how we're going to get this done in 8 meetings. And then still just want to keep highlighting the continuous frustration that we hear with people not getting paid for this work, even on our side. But then also I would almost rather just work with one other person to do some of the cross-cutting work. Or for me, League of Cities and Town is almost like a better conduit for getting municipal folks involved. So I'm wary of hiring a single contractor to kind of work across all the different council members, because I don't see how that would be targeted to each council member. Thank you.
Thanks, Raya. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
I would love to have a better understanding of what is possible and legal and with the money that's currently designated for community engagement. I think there was like $100,000, but correct me if I'm wrong. And how, if this is just one potential possibility, but if we have the advisory council, each advisory council member being responsible for a chunk of that money, and the engagement with the communities that they represent on this council with that money. And that could mean paying for their own time to host engagement meetings, or, you know, hiring community liaisons, or, you know, providing stipends for participation, of course, but also maybe even their own little mini contractor to run the engagement, to be a direct, you know, almost like you know, like almost like a staff person to the council member. So I would be really curious about that, to keep the engagement at sort of in the hands of these council members, but also resourcing them at the same time.
Agreed. Seconded.
Great. Yeah, so the current total number we had is 110,000. And so the rest of the funding kind of being held aside for the mapping tool exercise, but it's, you know, there's some given that, but the 110,000 reflected the idea of there being $10,000 for each advisory council member, kind of to your point, Jennifer. So in terms of a starting budget, we could think about allocating it that way. And then folks could obviously, you know, we're a collaborative enterprise here. Like if folks are like, I really don't need that much resources and we're really struggling to reach this community, we could adjust. But just as a starting point, I'm hearing an ask for Alex and I to go back with our legal team and maybe put together an explicit list of allowable uses and what we can tap into now. Helpful next step. Great. We can definitely do that. And just any initial reactions, responses, good or bad, around just starting with that sort of perspective of, you know, each of us sitting with what would we do with $10,000 potentially with this allowable use, and maybe that would help us put together a group vision, or think about distributing funds that way to start. Heard Zarai's encouragement. You're welcome to also use your thumbs up, thumbs down, you know, symbols if you don't want to jump off mic and talk. This raises a question for me that was also in this process action steps document, which is just about us as a group making decisions together. Like I'm looking at the clock, we have about 15 minutes left as a group. We have public comment period. We have 3 joint meetings scheduled out for the rest of the year. And then that leaves room for one more advisory council only meeting to get put on the books this year. We also can, obviously, we have flexibility with the joint meetings to say, we want the first 2 meeting hours of that meeting to be breakout time, and then we get together. So I'm just curious if anybody has initial thoughts now about, and we'll do, of course, a follow-up survey, but if anybody has any initial thoughts or proposals about this group getting back together and what you would want us to bring to that meeting to continue this conversation, just like really welcome feedback on that. I just keep adding prompts to our list, so they're all open. Other proposals, other ideas, thoughts on how we want to meet next, or follow-up reflections on other people's proposals are all welcome at this stage. Yeah, Kaya.
Yeah, there was a lot of prompts. My brain's super tired. I think meeting in person is better for me. I think I named this before. It is a challenge around accessibility for folks. It is not, this is not the best environment for me to be able to get work done. So that would be my request.
Thanks, Kaya. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Maybe also want to just chime in on that aspect of things. Jennifer asked the question if we can get transportation stipends for faraway members. It's a great question. I believe there's a mileage reimbursement rate that does not fully cover expenses. That does exist. I don't know about beyond that. So I can add that to the list of questions we can ask just general. I mean, the allowable use question, it's the same pool that we pay sort of per diems and things like that out of that we do community engagement out of. So should be the same sort of responses. Cool. I'm seeing more hands. Trey, Kai, I think that was from your original hand up. So it would be Trey, and then and then Gail wanted just to clarify, are we proposing in person only? So yeah, Trey, go ahead, and then if anyone wants to respond on
I wonder
Gail's
if
question,
there might be places where if it's not convenient for everybody to be in the same place every time, at least to have multiple people in one location. And then, you know, we could have 2 or 3 of those locations in different parts of the state if that helps to get some, you know, kind of people together. Although the equipment has to work well. And then the other thing is I really, well, I think I'll stop there because my other thought is too incomplete.
Thanks, Trey. Kai, I'm wondering if you would clarify just from your perspective, is the desire in person only, or is hybrid also with the right with working technology, huge asterisks, also something that can work?
I mean, hybrid's always something that can work, and I always, try to support that. But for myself personally, it's challenging for me to do online only.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Our intention has been for the joint meetings to be a hybrid, with an emphasis on in-person, but just recognizing that even sometimes the day of, just things happen with access. And then, for us to regroup, I think with that last meeting we have available to us in person this year, I don't know if folks would be interested in a really intentional in-person time, really focused on relationship building and connecting with each other as an advisory council. And, Alex and I could put it with enough time out, put in some effort to find a really good venue for that, make sure it's all in our calendars far enough out that we feel like we can make it, coordinate things like transportation support. So I just want to put that on our radar as maybe a way we could use our last time too, if that feels like it might make sense to folks. Okay, well, as always, you will get a survey asking these questions again, to some extent, just so Alex and I can do our best to make some of these choices. Appreciate feedback on that. So coming back then to just sort of proposals that have been, I just want to make sure we're closing some loops as we wind down here. So Alex and I will be following up with information about the budget and allowable uses really specifically that can inform how we go about doing community engagement. We're going to start to compile, and we'll ask for help, a regional sort of event list that's happening. And I want to note also that the Climate Action Office is doing some work around that, and we're coordinating really closely with them because, again, de-siloing and trying not to overburden communities, like hearing from us while you're hearing from the Climate Action Office, like it can sound similar. So we're trying to also be really thoughtful about coordinating in general, but putting together some lists of regional events that can open pathways for folks to, maybe volunteer to show up to those events and do that. And I want to make it explicitly clear that even though I know it's not a equitable or fair pay with per diems are assumed will be collected for any of this work outside of meetings. We will talk about and follow up on a way to maybe maintain a kind of written repository of any environmental justice concerns that are brought to advisory council meetings, and just start to get in the habit of doing that more explicitly. And I would love to follow up in the future, maybe in a joint meeting, about what's the connection point then between you all gathering that feedback and state agencies having information about resources to connect people to when those concerns come up, just so we can, bring solution to the concern collecting. And that we can start to, the other proposal is starting to work on agreed upon talking points for engagement and getting feedback on plain language outreach materials. Yeah, those are what I have so far. See, in our last 6 minutes, I don't know if we have time to get into it. I did want to flag just a specific recommendation that had come out of the joint meeting, was the potential to create some sort of buddy system where advisory council members might connect to 1 or 2 of the covered agencies, maybe based on your area of knowledge or interest or expertise, and start to create, because we can meet as smaller groups. So, there could be a smaller conversations happening where 1 or 2 advisory council members meet with the interagency committee member for X agency and maybe some other their staff, and we can start to build relationship that way, and just start to integrate, just make sure that the advisory council conversations interagency conversations connect with each other in tangible ways. So I think Zoraya had brought that suggestion forward in the first meeting. I just wanted to like re-temperature check potential interest in that. And I want to bring it up too, because the interagency committee meeting, they talked about buddying up as well, you know, sort of like agency to agency meeting in small groups to create support for each other. So we might want to just sort of connect this together. Yeah. So I just, want to open the floor and just hear if there's any thoughts about that piece at this point. So the next step, and the next step in the survey, we could maybe ask, you know, folks to let us know, if you have capacity for that sort of additional work, you know, right now. And then if so, which agencies, you know, kind of your top 3, maybe in order you'd be interested in being connected to, and we could take it from there. See, okay, great. All right, we have just a few minutes left. We were going to open for public comment. So yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Muted, sorry. Just wanted to flag for you that Gail has a question in the chat. What about meeting with each other? So Gail, not sure if you want to clarify that question, like advisory council members meeting with each other outside of meetings?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, what about, but would it be useful with butting up with each other? That sounds like a no. Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't assume that, Gail. I know what else, folks might just be tired. It's the end of the meeting.
No, Gail, I think that's a great idea. We could, I'm not sure what you are envisioning, but I'm sure that we can find time to do that. I think that's a great idea.
I think springboarding off each other, and it might be more cohesive.
Yeah, I think I wonder if, I don't think that, I'm always wary of, these, I know it's not technically valid, but like these positions that I think that if we pick different agencies, I wonder if that'll kind of naturally happen, because I hope that we'll have at least 2 people from the council on each agency. And so hopefully that will create, you know, like kind of smaller groups of us that are working together. But then also so that not one person feels like they're the only tie between the agency back to the rest of the council.
Yeah, Gail, and also we can try to understand a little bit more of each other's community and work spaces to see how much more we can collaborate. For instance, I'm thinking Jennifer's comment of her conservation district being underutilized. And I'm thinking, well, maybe if we understand a little bit more what that is and what is being underutilized and how the conservation districts work, we can, you know, come up with an idea of doing something together that will benefit the conservation districts and also will give us more access to people. And the same with the housing board and the same with the mobility park. We could understand each other a little bit more of our spaces and then find places to collaborate. So I think Gail's idea is a great idea.
Kai, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. So, I'm going to be completely transparent and honest in saying that I will need to limit what I'm able to contribute to this to kind of the official spaces that we're doing this work in, especially since it's not compensated. And I do appreciate coming into community, but there's many, many places that members of this advisory council, if you'd like to be in community with us external to this process, you can do that. But I personally cannot add another I can't do that right now. Like I just, like I'm giving enough to the state, just to be real, giving enough to the state. But I'd love to always be in community, and there are other spaces through Relief, through the Professional Color Network. There's so many other spaces that if there are folks here that want to get to know each other as people, I suggest and recommend those spaces, because I can't, like, I'm going to have to be very specific and very finite with what I give to this work, as I am not compensated for it, but it is an extractive process. So I don't mean to be harsh, but I'm just trying to be really transparent about that. And I'm grateful to be here, but that's just, I need to keep it 100% real.
Thank you, Kaya. Appreciate it. It's absolutely real. And welcome to feedback. So yeah, we need to right size what feels right to folks, and we need to, like, again, full circle, like we need to address head on the issue around inequitable compensation for this work. And I am loath to, there's sort of always this balancing act of continuing to move things forward and also not create the dynamic where it creates this impression that we can just do everything without compensation, because it just sort of creates this like perpetual loop that we never get out and ahead of. So yeah, I want us to be strategic about that. Yeah, so we'll follow up with folks, again, about this piece and buddying up on things so that for folks who want to do that, they can. And then I also just really appreciate Kaya's point that there are many spaces across the state where similar conversations and relationship building opportunities exist. The Environmental Justice Network Summit that was put on this weekend was a really beautiful community building event. And so much credit to Brittany and all the folks who brought that together. So there are these other spaces, and I think us also getting the habit of just emailing each other as a group when those opportunities exist, or sharing resources with each other is just healthy practice. So, okay. With that, let's go ahead and reopen the floor for public comment. If anybody wants to chime in at this point, and then we can do some quick closing out together and wrap up. Anyone in the public who'd like to speak at this point? I see Cheryl. You want to go ahead?
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not real familiar with this format, but anyway, thank you for doing this. I know that there is just a lot of public interest in getting something real to happen. I was wondering about having a website, if that would be something you could think about, is having a website as a tool that's kind of to connect people to people. That's just a simple front end on a Vermont EJ site that you could go there and connect with other people interested in the same thing, or get access to a resource, be routed to a conservation district, would feed into a database. That's pretty straightforward. You could do analysis and so forth, but it would be something tangible that the public could go to. So that was my thought. Just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Cheryl. Alex can drop in the chat where we currently have information online, and it's certainly not fully what you're envisioning yet. So I really appreciate the feedback, because it's something we have been thinking about is how we can use the website that we have, and or if there's other online tools to connect folks. So yeah, I really appreciate that feedback. I think I saw Earl's hand.
Yeah, for some reason I can't
I'm not
get
sure if you're
mine.
speaking.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, I can't get my video to work, but I'll just, excuse me, say this. To earlier comments about engaging folks in the communities and the difficulty with that. I think in light of what we've just experienced with flooding and the climate issues, oh, there we go. I think I would like to see this committee reach out to the communities about their experiences with the flooding. With the climate issue, it impacts housing, utilities, a number of issues that our communities are having to deal with. And then we have legislation around energy and climate policy. And so there's talk of transitioning to electricity and how to do that. And folks are hearing this narrative. I think your surveys of communities, you could instead of asking them what's their EJ concerns, which they wouldn't understand what you're asking, a lot of them, asking them about these specific issues that are related to climate and climate change, housing, their utility bills, and transitioning to electricity, and asking them their experiences with all of this and with the flooding and how it's impacted them and what they think needs to be done to benefit their community and help their community. This gets back to another comment about how this work would translate over to legislation and also to agency assistance that could be provided to these communities. And I think it's a good place for the EJ Council to be focused in this specific way of surveying our BIPOC and low-income communities about how they're dealing with all of these issues and giving us a pulse on what a just transition would be as we deal with this climate problem. That's my comment. Leonie.
Thank you, Earl. Any other public comments, questions? Does anybody on the advisory council just want to speak to anything they heard?
Just appreciate Earl's idea, and I do think that at some point, again, I think I would wait until we see what we actually have, because surveys for the sake of surveys, I think, can be a little extractive if we don't feel like we can have a way to implement what some of the things are. But I do hope that at some point we have a broader way for people to input when we say, these are some of the things we think we have control over, and how do we best do that.
Thanks, Raya. Jennifer.
I also appreciated the comment of having a some type of interactive, like public facing website, and think that fits really well into the conversation around the use and functionalities of the environmental justice mapping tool, which is sort of at the heart of what the community engagement money is for. So I think that also can be, I'm looking forward to the guidance on what we can spend the money on, because that probably needs to be teased out a little bit too. But everything kind of connects back into that mapping tool and how it will be used and who will use it. Yeah, I would love to see it be a community engagement tool and an opportunity to hear from people.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay. Great. Well, lots to take back. Alex and I will put together sort of the takeaway of next steps and start to put these things together, and we can, try to identify the things that really would benefit from cross-cutting advisory council and interagency dialogue next Monday. So yeah, thanks, Earl. Knowing their issues is how you get to figuring out how to solve them. Heard. Yep. And so I think it's just bridging these two pieces, you know, and I really would like the interagency committee to feel to hold alongside you all the obligation of that accountability piece of when we ask for folks' input that it's going somewhere. So it's really got to be a team effort, I think, for this to work well. And it's not fair to expect you all to do community engagement in a vacuum outside of what the interagency committee is doing. So I think we can really bridge this dialogue next week. I dropped the circle order back in the chat. I was wondering if we could just close out our meeting, just going around and just maybe, you know, to